Good afternoon, everyone. Andy Jacob here with the DotCom Magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series. I have an amazing show today. I am so excited that we've been able to book Mr. Frank Aiello on the show. And you probably heard of Frank. Frank is one of the leading experts in domains. He is the founder and CEO of BrokersCrowd. And when you hear the types of domains that he represents and his experience and background, you're going to be not only amazed, but you're going to want to stay tuned for the entire show. We're going to peel it all back, what all the domains are all about and why you need a great domain for your business. Frank, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Andy.
You're welcome. It's super cool to have you on the show. You know, we are so excited when we get leaders in their respective field. You've been at this domain name business for a long time. You've built an amazing reputation. You've done keynote speaking. Everybody's trying to get you on their list, so to speak, to talk about domaining. Frank, let's pull the lens back to 30,000 feet and tell us all about BrokersCrowd.
Sure. So BrokersCrowd has been around for about 10 years. It's a brokerage company focused specifically on premium domain names. So I represent buyers and sellers, buyers who are looking for specific domain names to help them with nailing down what it is they want to put online, or sellers who are looking to divest some asset that they may have acquired a long time ago from an investment perspective, looking to turn a profit. So typically these are premium domains like graduate.com, beethoven.com, and a variety of others that I've represented over the years.
I love it. And the key word that you use there, Frank, is an asset. So people that have these domains, besides using them for their business, which is always an important thing to think about when you start a business, what the domain's going to be. A lot of people, have made investments in domains, and many of these domains have gone up dramatically in value. The interesting thing about domains, you have, of course, graduate.com and beethoven.com. So the name itself in the domaining business, Frank, let me ask you a question. So perhaps somebody likes Beethoven and they want beethoven.com, but of course, Beethoven could be used for anything else. It could be used for a technology company or a medical company or something like that, because Beethoven says something that's great. So let's talk about how all that works for companies that are looking for a domain name with naming the company.
Yeah, sure. So there's a variety of different angles you can look at a domain name with, right? So you can acquire domains specific to breaks.com. And you obviously have a very narrow channel for how you're going to use that asset, right? So if you're going to acquire that and then use that, it's likely going to be sold to a Meineke or, one of the big breaks companies out there. But like you said, a name like beethoven.com is really far reaching in terms of the audience that it can be applied to, right? And I think you were spot on with saying a name like Beethoven could be perfect for a technology company, right? IBM might be rolling out a new software called Beethoven, or Apple might have a new release called Beethoven. So it's prudent for them, or it's very important for them to have these assets online, really from a reputation perspective. It's not just, hey, let me get a premium domain just to have that. Because if you think about it, most people today go to Google if they want to find something, right? They use Siri, they use Google, so not a lot of people are actually typing in that exact phrase, but having the domain name gives your brand or your company, really a presence in the space that's above all,
That makes all the sense in the world. And obviously you want something that people can remember, that resonates with people. Let's stick with Beethoven because it's a great example. Whether you're a sales trainer or whether you have a book or whether you're an expert in your field or whether you have a new technology, maybe you even have a new platform for cybersecurity. These are the types of companies that could use Beethoven because it just rolls off the tongue. Let's say I'm a cybersecurity company and I'm talking to a potential client, Frank, and I say, Our new offering is called the Beethoven Cybersecurity Suite. All you need to do is go to Beethoven.com. We have a SaaS model. So it's incredible what you can do with a great name, Frank. And I think that's the value that you bring, because you have such an amazing group of domains under the BrokersCrowd umbrella right now. It's really, really exciting. Let's talk about graduate.com. I can think of 100 things that I could use with graduate.com right now. I'm sure you're fielding a lot of requests from companies. Let's talk about that domain as well.
Yeah, so graduate.com is a really good one. And I have a particular, interest in this name specifically because my wife and I have stayed at Graduate Hotel a million times. So, this was my first prospect when trying to sell the name. But as you know, there's a huge community for online education, right? So there's a prospect right there. The University of Phoenixes of the world. The graduate.com can mean a variety of different things, can be applied to, folks who, maybe master a certain skill. Maybe it's a curated site where folks can come in and learn from people who are graduates in certain areas. So again, a really premium name, something very easy, simple to remember. And the important thing to remember here is that it's easy to spell, right? Not all short domains are fantastic domains, right? So I think the ones that are short, easy to spell, easy to remember, and let's keep in mind too, .com still is the leader in the space. I mean, you're seeing all these other extensions come out, and it's good, it's great, it's offering buyers out there a wide variety to choose from, instead of trying to pour all their money into the premium.com, because premium.coms are typically a lot more expensive. But the graduate.com is still going to be the leader. It's still going to be the leader. It's the .com. If you ask my grandmother or my aunt even, they won't even know what a .io is or a whatever. And most people still know what .coms are. So,
Frank, I love it. And of course, we're DotComMagazine.com. So we have got .com everywhere. So you're on the .com Magazine, Entrepreneur Spotlight Series. So I'm glad you said that. We're big believers in .com as DotComMagazine.com, of course. So,
sure.
So when we think about even graduate.com, I mean, I can think of not only like online universities wanting this domain, but I can think of, for example, someone that's doing training how to become, let's say, even an air conditioning technician, or maybe a personal self-help guru that wants to teach people how to graduate from their system, or even consultants that maybe help other companies out, and when that company goes through the consultation, they can get a graduate to, a semi-graduate degree, if you will, in whatever they're teaching. So there's so many things that can be used for all of these different domain names that you have. Let's talk about sort of a startup company, Frank, because obviously they're not going to be able to, in most cases, afford the 6-figure or 7-digit figure number that some of your domain names command at this point in time. But when you're talking to a startup founder, what do you recommend to them? Is it always start with the .com if they can get it first, and then what do they use for the domain name in terms of keywords or whatever with regard to the company name?
Yeah, so I think it's really all over the place right now. I mean, especially in the blockchain and in the Bitcoin world, you're seeing a lot of properties pop up that have .io, .market, whatever. So I think there's the added GTLDs that are out there are really a huge benefit for these startups that are coming in with limited funding. And like you said, not everyone's going to have $500,000 just to drop on a couple letters, right? So I understand that. And I always like, when I'm talking to my clients, I'd like to advise them that, you will, as long as you have the right marketing strategy in place, as long as you're providing some service or offering that's viable to the market that you're hitting, you'll be successful. But again, will you be the top ranked? I mean, if OpenSea, the leading NFT market, is promoting their platform, which is by far and large the most popular place to trade NFTs, and veering off a little bit, but ultimately they're going to want to get the .com too. I mean, that just makes logical sense. And if you look at like a Facebook, for example, you can type in every which way Facebook is spelt. You can type it with every single extension. They've got it all covered because they're a well-rounded organization. They know how to cover every angle of the web to make sure that they're not losing customers at any street that customer navigates on. So
that's incredible, Frank. Now, I made some notes as I was getting ready for this interview because, I was just ecstatic to get you on the show because I'm looking at some of these domains on your website, and anybody that really wants to check out what Frank's doing, go to BrokersCrowd. It's a real easy to use website, and I love what you've got, but you've got designers.com that's available right now on the website, and you've got graduate.com, and how about this one? Translation.com is available on the website. And one that really caught my eye was anxiety.com. Now, I could imagine that one being used by, some type of online self-help service or an online psychological sort of telemed type service. So you've got some incredible domain names, and one that just is a standout because everybody, Frank, wants to get outside now because of what's going on through the COVID epidemic is hike.com, like go take a hike outside. You are really at the pinnacle of what you're doing, and not to mention, of course, weightlifting.com that everybody has to get their workouts in. How have you managed to become the broker for such amazing domain names, Frank?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I mean, I started my career in the domain industry working for a Dutch company called Sedo, S-E-D-O. And I started back in 2009. And at the time, I had no clue what I was getting myself into. I was a 20-something-year-old punk who lived in Boston who just wanted to have fun, right, and make a lot of money. So I started there, and I built up a reputation for myself because I was fortunate enough to have management of an oversight portfolio that included about 400,000 domains. So this portfolio was owned by a gentleman named Frank Schilling. Frank Schilling is the biggest, what you might call, domainer in the world, right? He's bought and held and sold more domains than probably anybody on the planet. So he was leveraging Sedo at the time to sell domains through the Sedo platform. And I was fortunate enough to be the rep at Sedo to manage that whole relationship. So, I gained quite a reputation for myself. And then at the same time, my responsibility also included taking on premium domains and doing more of a forward-leaning approach to going out to the market to sell those names, right? Much like a real estate agent does, and I think my process over the years has been just trust, right? I mean, there's in the last 10 or 15 years, there's been a flood of brokers from all around the country that have jumped into the space. And I think, there's a lot of good ones, but there's also a lot of nefarious characters, if you will, who, act sort of behind the scenes and try to get things done in not the most ethical manners. So I think, trust has been a big thing for me. I want my clients to know that they can trust me. When I represent them, I give every domain I bring on as much attention as I possibly can. I never dilute myself in terms of how many names I take on, because a lot of brokers can take on a lot of names, but it's an extremely heavy lifting process to go out and make sure you're marketing all domains to the right audiences at the same time. So, it's just a variety of different things, and just general relationship building, good customer service, customer service 101.
I love it so much. And of course, through the pandemic, we've learned, Frank, that so many people even are thinking about, and I'm going here because it kind of tells the audience the way that Frank's mind thinks about domains, because obviously during the pandemic, what's been on everybody's mind is, not only do they want to get out and take a hike, with hike.com, but a lot of people are saying to themselves, I want to move maybe away from where I'm at, and I want to go smaller. I want to tighten things up. And what's been everywhere on the news is everybody's looking for tiny homes. And I think it's really interesting that if you want tinyhomes.com, you need to go to BrokersCrowd and talk to Frank, because lo and behold, he has tinyhomes.com as well, don't you, Frank?
Yeah. it's a great domain. It's, it's definitely a niche market. It's becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. And, with COVID, people are coming out of the cities, and they're, the whole geographic map is changing, and people are buying properties all over the place. So I think it's a great opportunity for somebody who wants to maybe curate a website specific to tiny home development.
Now, there's just so many domains. I can't get through them all, but I'm so excited about domains. One other domain, and I can keep going on and on with what Frank has. You have to go to the website. When you see these domain names, it's absolutely incredible. So when we're thinking about, Frank, again, the pandemic, things sort of coalesced, and we've been up in Mars for 12 months, and everybody's kind of coming back to Earth, thank goodness. And our thoughts, of course, and prayers go out to people, impacted by the COVID epidemic. But one thing that has happened, unfortunately, during the pandemic is, people have been maybe reaching for the bottle a little bit more than usual. And we know that teenagers are less inclined to be as happy maybe as they once were, according to some research studies. And we know that people, unfortunately, are having some difficult times. And I'm kind of bringing the volume down a little bit here, because this is more of an important domain name for the world. And you have sober.com. Now, I could imagine that one would be great for someone that wants to offer an opportunity for people that have had a challenging time, maybe to turn their life around a little bit and become sober and kind of get back in the ball game, versus sort of being, left off the straight and narrow path by perhaps some, drug and alcohol problems. And this is a major problem in the world, and you have sober.com. So I would imagine someone's going to take that and really do some great with it in the world. And I love that so much. So congratulations also on having those types of domains as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's an excellent name. It's definitely going to get bought by the right buyer. And I'm hoping that the right buyer does right by it, creates a platform for individuals to get back on their feet right now. And I also mentioned that every deal that we do right now, BrokersCrowd, 25% of our commissions go back to a charity of, our client's choice. So we make $20,000 in commission. 5 of that goes to whatever charity our clients wish. So, and if they don't have a charity in mind, we donate to Feeding America. We've done it 18 times, I think, just about this year.
I love it so much. You really have probably the world's premier group of domains. As the expert, domain broker that you are, you've got your hands on horoscope.com, gesture.com, profile.com, judgment.com, chore.com. It just goes on and on and on Frank's website at BrokersCrowd. So Frank, let's talk a little bit about domain names and how maybe a startup founder names their company. Do they always need to name the company the same as the domain name? Is that your recommendation here?
No, a lot of companies don't. A lot of companies will grab a domain, or they'll name their company and then follow with the domain name, right? And then usually it's a long tail domain, because a lot of folks around the world still don't understand the importance of a short, memorable URL, right? The URL online, our browser is what we typically look at every single day of our lives on our smartphones, on our computers. It's embedded in who we are right now. That URL bar is integral into making sure that your company is successful. So you need to make sure, when you're naming your company, that name is available. If you want to get that name, you need to, negotiate with a broker like myself, maybe try to reach out to the seller directly, whatever angle that you want to take to try to get that. It's critically important that you have that. I see one too many companies coming out on the market, for instance, and you could drive down any street of your local neighborhood and see URLs associated to the different companies around your neighborhood. they're typically long tail. They have hyphens in them. Nobody's ever going to remember that. Nobody's ever going to recall that, right? So I think it just kind of comes full circle here, where you have to have that premium name. It's incredibly important, and I advocate for it day in and day out when anyone is starting their startup. And if the .com is not available, get the .net, get the .org. Get whatever it is that you can that's short and memorable, but don't go long tail. I mean, and I'll also say too that I'm not bashing long tail domains either. Some long tail domains are very good. Some long tail domains have sold for a lot of money, 2, 3, 4 word .coms. But again, it's not going to be the same market as a premium domain name. So.
I love it, Frank. It makes all the sense in the world. I have a real life example, Frank, where a number of weeks ago, I was talking to a young lady who has a super cool invention. It's a startup, and she's already done almost 7 figures in revenue. She has an interesting business where she's figured out how to take dental flossing into the shower. So she has this unit that goes into the shower. It hooks up to the faucet, and you get the dental floss in the shower using the shower water without real dental floss. So I started thinking about it. I go to Frank's website, and he, of course, has dentalflossing.com. So there's just so much that he has. It's really incredible. Now, as a personal real life story as well, for a company, I order a lot of printed material. So I order a lot of hats and shirts and baseball caps, and they're all embroidered, or they're printed with the name of my startup, a startup that I've invested in. And I started thinking about, wow, that's a great business model. Again, you go to Frank's website, BrokersCrowd, and what are you going to find? Imprinted.com on the website. So there's just so many different domain names that Frank has available, Frank, and it's just incredible. I wanted to thank you for coming on the show. But before we go, Frank, I wanted to talk about entrepreneurship, because you've built a great company. You represent some of the best domains in abundance in the world, probably one of the finest, portfolios that anybody has the ability to represent. So when we think about entrepreneurship, Frank, a lot of people are going to say, what's Frank's why? I mean, what gets him out of bed? I'm selling domain names, and he's a worldwide leader in it. But what gets you out of bed? What's your why? Why does Frank get out of bed every day, put his pants on, and get to work?
Well, outside of my 2-year-old, that's a good question. I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, I'm entrepreneurial at my core, right? And and I usually tell most people, this is kind of going around that question a little bit, but I usually tell most people who get into the domain brokerage space that you have to have more patience than any other industry that you'll ever be in your life. And you have to reach out to at least 1,000 people to get a yes, right? And it's typically, door-to-door sales. If you have any familiarity with that, it's a lot of rejection, right? So you have to be able to continuously pick yourself back up. I've had BrokersCrowd for a long time. I started domain brokerage a long time ago. I've had my ups, and I've had my extreme highs and my extreme lows, right? Like any somebody operating their own organization. So I think, the big why for me is also helping organizations lift off the ground in the right way. I think it's not just so much about getting a domain name, but helping them with their online strategy, maybe offering some recommendations or staying on as a consultant after they launch their brand to help them in any which way I can to be successful online. It's very competitive online. So it's, it starts with a premium domain.
It really does, Frank. And this has just been so amazing to have you on the show. And thank you so much. And, not only do we have the best of the best on the show, but we have a lot of very interesting and important people watching the show. So if there's any billionaires out there right now watching the show, you know who you are. It starts with a B. And you have young kids that are having a tough time. You're getting you have a tough time getting them to do some chores around the house or chores outside. If we have any billionaires out there, I have a little idea for you. Why don't you go to Frank's website, BrokersCrowd, because he has chore.com, of course, for sale on the website. And maybe you should buy that domain and then teach your kids how to do chores through the domain chore.com that you just bought through Frank. So kind of kidding, but it's really, really incredible what you've got on the website. You've got pant.com, telethons.com, judgment.com. Of course, drugtreatmentcenter.com, you know, that's incredible for a drug treatment center. I mean, that's a must-have domain name for somebody in that space. And of course, one other thing that's really coming to mind during COVID is all of the people that want their health tested. Well, if you have a business that's doing health testing, where do you go for healthtesting.com? I'm talking to the guy, Mr. Frank Aiello. Frank, it's really unbelievable what you've got. I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's really been a delight. And thank you so much for talking about what you're doing at BrokersCrowd. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.